The best passer rating in the history of the NFL belongs to a guy with only one ring. 102.2. That's the number that nobody has ever beaten when it comes to passer rating. Aaron Rodgers won 4 MVPs and he's got exactly 1 Super Bowl. One that he won back in February of 2011, when he was just 27 years old. Everybody in Wisconsin, and frankly the rest of the NFL landscape, figured there'd be 3 or 4 more of those things coming, but it never happened. Instead, 3 different head coaches lost their building with him standing in it. Mike McCarthy got fired in Green Bay in December of 2018, and those two had been together for 13 years at that point. Robert Saleh got fired in October of 2024 after the first year got wasted by injury, and Mike Tomlin literally just quit in Pittsburgh back in January after 19 years. And the man never had a losing season in his life. It happened 3 different times in 3 different places, and each time Aaron Rodgers acted like nothing happened. And I'm not just gonna sit here and tell you he purposely got them fired because it's mostly wrong, but we can't argue with the results. Every room he ends up walking into, a coach ends up walking out before he does. And there ain't a single organization on earth built to survive that. So what is it about Aaron Rodgers that makes him so prickly, so hard to get along with? Why does everywhere he go end up in flames? How come barely any teammates come to his defense? And how come everything we hear about him is negative? Let's start by comparing him to some of his contemporaries. Peyton Manning won 5 MVPs and got 2 rings out of it. Tom Brady won 3 MVPs and walked out with 7 rings. Patrick Mahomes is only 9 years into his career and he's already got 3 and is also a multi-time MVP. Aaron Rodgers has 4 MVPs, but somehow he only has 1 ring. And 4 is a lot of MVPs. That's Manning territory, and Manning needed 18 years to get to that point. And he's widely considered the best regular season quarterback of all time. And Aaron Rodgers was playing during the Manning era. He's also got the best touchdown to interception ratio anyone's ever put up, and it ain't even close. Nobody who's played this sport has been more careful with the football while also still getting those explosive plays downfield. But I have to be honest with you guys because I love watching him throw the ball. That release, the arm angles, the way he just easily flips the ball down the field, the way he can freeze a safety and then just rip it over the top, how he can literally see an opportunity before anyone else and then simply put up a hand sign to his receiver and the receiver knows exactly what to do. The guy had mobility that most quarterbacks would dream of, and he's able to drop it in a bucket on the run, 40 yards downfield like nothing. The only quarterback you can even compare him to in terms of talent is Mahomes. No one else is even close. But we have to look at what he should have been. And what he should have been is a hell of a lot more than just 1 Super Bowl parade. Look, over his time there at Green Bay, he went 1-4 in NFC championships. He's the first quarterback since 1970 to lose 4 consecutive conference title games in a row. And that's not a record you can even get near unless you're incredibly good to begin with. You can't just get to an NFC championship with ease. So it means there is something great about him, but something's just holding him back. Let's start with Seattle because that one afternoon is basically his entire career in a nutshell. Green Bay was up 16-0 at halftime. At the time, I was like 13 years old watching this game at Skate Country, I'm not even joking. And at the time, I was a huge Seahawks fan. I loved watching Russ play, and I thought the Legion of Boom were the coolest thing to ever exist. And instead of skating, I was sitting there watching this game. Green Bay got inside Seattle's 1-yard line twice in the first half and kicked field goals both times. Then with 5 minutes left, they're still up 12. Seattle scores and then they recover an onside kick off the backup tight end's helmet and they go on to score again. This time getting a 2-point conversion off of a broken play, and this was before the overtime rule was changed. Seattle scored a touchdown and the game was over. Atlanta ran them off their own field the next time they got there. I live near Atlanta and that was an absolute shock to see. We never thought in a million years that the Falcons could actually beat the Packers in a big spot. And it wasn't just a victory. The Falcons beat the absolute crap out of them 44-21. And while Aaron had a solid game, he got thoroughly outplayed by a player that is nowhere near as good as him. Matt Ryan threw for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then again in 2019, San Francisco knocked Green Bay out of the playoffs yet again in the NFC Championship. From what I was able to research, he's the only quarterback who has ever lost 4 playoff games to the exact same team. And it was San Francisco all 4 times. And then Tampa Bay walked into Lambeau Field in the middle of one of Aaron's MVP seasons and beat them again. And I know a lot of people are gonna start saying, bro, the defense gave up so many points in those games. What the hell is he supposed to do if Matt Ryan goes for 400 yards? Look, you're right. You're right about that. You're completely right. The defense was a problem for a good part of the decade. The front office spent 10 years assuming that a generational arm could cover up for some of the other holes on the roster, and for the most part, it did. They ended up winning around 11 games a year for about a decade, made the NFC Championship a handful of times. They just weren't able to get over the hump. But that 2011 team actually had a good defense. They went 15-1 that year. and the only loss they had was to Eli Manning at home, where Aaron Rodgers played the worst game he had that entire season. But because that defense was so good overall, they ended up hoisting the Lombardi trophy. So I'll say for sure that argument does have legs. But let's look at the actual reality here. The fact that he only reached one Super Bowl has more to do with just what he did on the field. Let's go back to 2021 when he told a room of reporters that he had been, quote, immunized. He wasn't. And when that came out, the league fined him and it fined the Packers. He then took a 4-day darkness retreat to decide whether or not he'd even keep playing football. He went on to Pat McAfee's show every single week for years for a reported $1 million a pop, and even one time mentioned that Jimmy Kimmel might be on the Epstein list. That's just flat out wrong, I don't care how you look at it. These are the kind of antics that every single NFL locker room tries to avoid, yet Aaron Rodgers kept finding himself in the middle of it. But here's the thing, as a person, as an actual human being, I don't mind this stuff at all, and in fact I kind of like this about him. I love how there's at least one guy in the NFL who simply just doesn't care about the media. There's so many media trained robots who just say whatever they need to say to get the media off their back. And I understand why those players do it. It removes any sort of billboard material or extra noise surrounding the team. But Aaron Rodgers just simply didn't care. And when it comes to entertainment, what Aaron Rodgers does is far more entertaining for everyone involved. But every time he opens his mouth, there comes a cost, and the cost ends up hitting the locker room. It's much easier to stomach all of those antics when you're winning games, but the moment there's some adversity, things start slipping very fast. And if we're seeing Aaron Rodgers say these things publicly, just imagine the types of things he's saying behind closed doors to his teammates, and try to think about what his own teammates have said about him as well. The very best example I can bring up is Greg Jennings. Yes, Greg Jennings loves to glaze Aaron Rodgers when it comes to talent and things on the field. But even Greg, who ended up winning a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, has quite a few things to say negatively when it comes to his personality and the way he deals with things. He's brought his leadership chops into question multiple times on national television, which brings me back to Mike McCarthy. Mike and Aaron had won over 125 games together, and from 2006 to 2018, there were only 2 teams in football that won more regular season games than the Packers did. On paper, it looks like one of the greatest coach and quarterback marriages of all time, but it wasn't. In that building, it was a constant fight over the offense. Mike McCarthy would call plays, and Aaron Rodgers would literally just change it on his own. It got to the point where Aaron was just calling his own plays and completely ignoring whatever Mike was saying over the headset. And it wasn't just some mystery, everybody who covered the team had some version of this. So you've got 2 men who both believed they were the smartest football mind in the room, but only one of them had a job that they could lose at that time. Green Bay fired Mike McCarthy in December of 2018 after a home loss to Arizona. Aaron Rodgers stayed and won 2 more MVPs, so it seemed like that war was over with. Aaron Rodgers was great without Mike McCarthy, and Mike McCarthy was just a bum to everybody else. But here's something that I have to admit. I'm a Cowboys fan, and I watched Mike McCarthy run our football team for about 5 years. And I'm gonna say something that Packers fans might hate hearing. The man can coach football. Dallas won 12 games 3 years in a row under him. He took the play calling over himself after Kellen Moore left, and that offense didn't really slow down. One of his best decisions was hiring Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn had that defense humming better than I had ever seen it in a decade. They were leading the league in interceptions, had takeaways, they were getting sacks, they were getting defensive touchdowns. I mean, Dallas was looking like a legitimate contender during that time. They were smashing watermelons in the locker room, and the vibes were pretty good overall. Now, we did end up getting our hearts ripped out in the wildcard game, and nonetheless it was by the Packers, a team that ended up dropping 48 points on our head, and I watched every single second of it trying to tear my own eyes out of my head, and I quite frankly still haven't recovered, but Aaron Rodgers was not part of that team. Jordan Love was the Packers quarterback. Aaron Rodgers had more or less been shipped out of the building. Many people say Aaron Rodgers chose to leave, but that's not actually what happened. They ended up replacing him just like how he replaced Brett Favre many years before. So then that begs the question that this entire video is framing around. There's a pattern that has existed multiple times with him. Mike McCarthy leaves Aaron and still continues to win. The Packers get rid of Aaron and they still continue to win. If the coaching was the problem, then why did they continue to win without Aaron? And if the rosters were broken, why does that same thing keep happening? When Green Bay drafted Jordan Love back in 2020, Aaron Rodgers found out the same way everybody else did. He watched it happen on TV with a graphic under it. And I mean, everything he said about the pick was right. He said it was the organization telling him that they were done with him. He also said he could still play at the very top of this league. And he went out and won an MVP that exact year. And then he won it again after that. Back-to-back MVPs. So his best football came when he was spiteful. It bought him about 3 years, but that's it. And then he left to go to New York. A place where Aaron Rodgers felt that he could control the situation and finally be the one to call the shots. No weird organizational politics to hold him back, no weird non-ownership situation like there is in Green Bay, just a front office willing to bend the knee to whatever he wants. New York gave him everything they asked for. They brought Nat Hackett into the building, they signed some of his old receivers, and they built their entire football operation around what he wanted. And 4 snaps into the first game, he snapped his Achilles. And somehow the Jets still went 7-10 without him. And the next year was the one that was supposed to turn everything around. The next year is the one that people are going to remember because it was ugly. 5-12. Yeah, he threw for a decent amount of yards, but it didn't matter because he finished near the bottom of the league in every single efficiency number there is. If you remember, he skipped mandatory minicamp that June to go to Egypt. Imagine telling your boss that I'm gonna miss a mandatory meeting to go see some pyramids in Egypt and see how fast they kick you out of that job. And then the Mike Williams moment. In week 6 in a loss to Buffalo, Mike Williams ran the wrong route on an interception. And what would a normal quarterback do in this situation? Usually the quarterbacks like to take blame in this situation, but instead Aaron deflected. Aaron walks up to the podium and explains in complete detail exactly which line on the practice field Mike Williams was supposed to be running in public on camera in front of the entire country. Mike Williams got traded 3 weeks later. Ryan Fitzpatrick said afterward that the whole thing was just a rough look when it comes to leadership, and I couldn't agree more. Then there was the Garrett Wilson stuff, and by December those two were taking shots at each other. Robert Saleh got fired, Joe Douglas got fired, and in January there was a new head coach and a new GM in the building that wanted nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers. They ate a ton of dead cap to get him out of the building. Everybody that he brought to the franchise was gone, including himself. And finally he gets to Pittsburgh at 41 years old. And he's still pretty damn good all things considered. 10-6 as a starter with 24 touchdowns and only 7 picks. And the first AFC North title the city had seen in over 5 years. He sealed it with a game-winning throw against Baltimore in week 18, causing them to miss the playoffs and the Steelers to make it. Vintage Aaron Rodgers. But that was the peak. Houston came into Acrisure Stadium in the wildcard round and beat the absolute snot out of them 30-6. And it's actually much worse than the score indicates, because CJ Stroud was playing like a complete disaster in that game and gave the Steelers a few chances to get back in it. But Aaron Rodgers was just getting absolutely obliterated in that game. Getting cracked in the head, getting cracked in the ribs. He was basically in a torture chamber. And a few days after that loss, Mike Tomlin resigned. A man that had never finished under 500 in all of his seasons of football. And then that leads us to this most recent offseason. Pittsburgh hired Mike McCarthy. The first coach that he got fired, the one that he ended up outlasting, the one that Aaron thought he was better than. And Aaron even said part of the reason why he re-signed for this year is because Mike McCarthy was there. So I'm a bit confused. When things ended in the past, Aaron Rodgers didn't seem to like the guy, but now he's the reason he wants to continue playing football? This is starting to sound like a soap opera, and I guess that's kind of what Aaron Rodgers' career actually is. Yes, there were some amazing high moments, but when you really look at it, most of his career was just drama. Winning until the moment mattered most, the stakes got the highest, and then Aaron Rodgers didn't deliver. He went to war with the media, went to war with teammates, coaches, GMs, basically everybody. But if you're like Mike McCarthy and you guys get along again, then he can see you as a reason to continue playing football. At the end of the day, Aaron Rodgers just wants to be around people that he likes. Or I guess I should say people that don't challenge him. And that's the main problem, because after Aaron Rodgers won that Super Bowl, there wasn't a single person on earth that could actually hold him accountable. Anything that he did wrong would automatically be deflected onto somebody else. It's the scheme, it's the lack of defense, it's the receivers running the wrong route, it's the NFL having a stupid COVID protocol, it's Jimmy Kimmel being on the Epstein files. You know what I mean? There's always something else going on with this guy. It's never just football. And while I love that about him, it's what ends up making him lose in the biggest moments. Because only a true leader can get through those adverse situations. A Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes is the complete opposite of this. They never gave fodder to anybody. And sure, there may have been disagreements in the background, but they never made it public. And that's why the man with the highest passer rating of all time is sitting at 1 ring, while there are several guys with less talent that ended up winning more than he did.